Okay, I was going to quit for the day, but then I saw that their next chapter is Unpleasant Discoveries, chapter 7 on page 62, and it doesn't have that many pages. So now I'm really curious, and I just want to keep reading. So let's read chapter 7. My friends in room 26 had been thinking so much about boats. I was relieved to be at the Brisbane's house, where they always paid a lot of attention to me. You can imagine my surprise when they continued to think of nothing but boats all weekend too. Mr. Brisbane read about model sailboats, sketched them, and worked on them in his garage workshop. Meanwhile, Mrs. Brisbane kept busy writing things on pieces of paper. Every once in a while, she'd drop and chuckle. Every once in a while, she would stop and chuckle. When I first met Mrs. Brisbane, she never chuckled. In fact, she hardly ever smiled because Mr. Brisbane's automobile accident. But slowly over time, she regained her sense of humor. Maybe I helped just a little bit. Still, it was unusual for her to sit and chuckle in a room all by herself. People often say and do very strange things in front of me, almost as if I'm invisible. Finally, Mr. Brisbane came in from the garage. "You're still working on your list?" he asked. "Yes," she said, chuckling again. "I tell you, this is going to be one fun field trip." So that was it. She was planning the picnic at Potter's Pond. Ugh, what I would give to get a peek of her list. Luckily, the Brisbanes started yawning early, even though I would have liked to have them set up a nice obstacle course for me to run. I wasn't that sorry to see them go to bed. You see, I had a plan. And when a hamster has a plan, almost nothing, can stand in its way. I waited until the house was very, very, very quiet. Then I fiddled with my cage door, and as usual, it swung right open. Thank goodness for my lock that doesn't lock. I was feeling especially adventurous because the only peril I faced in the Brisbane's house was the possibility of getting caught outside my cage. I was willing to take the chance because I had a mission to find out more about the picnic at Potter's Pond. I could see the list was sitting right on Mrs. Brisbane's desk. Of course, before I set out, I had to map my route like the sailors and even pirates do. I slid down the leg of a low table where my cage sat and scurried across the carpet. It felt nice on my paws, but I couldn't move that fast on it as I can on Aldo's shining, slippery floors. The desk looked like a mountain to a small hamster like me. However, I knew that where there's a will and a plan, there's a way. Close to the desk, there's a nice cozy chair with a striped blanket draped over it. I grabbed onto the blanket and pulled myself up, paw over paw, then hopped onto the desk where there was Mrs. Brisbane's list right in front of me. I was pretty excited until I looked more closely and saw that Mrs. Brisbane had a rectangle paperweight angled on top of the list, blocking part of the writing. I could only make out parts of a few words. See how it's like blocking it. My heart was pounding. Lung? Were we studying the lungs? Was something going on to lunge us at? And maybe at lunch? Ugh, that's what I was hoping for. Tray. Made my heart pound a little. It surely meant treasure. Capty. Just had to be captain. Was a real ship captain coming along? Or was the captain of a pirate ship? Eek! What about those colors? Were blue and red the color of the jewels of the treasure? And what on earth was secret G? Secret guy? Secret girl? Secret gold? Ugh, it could be so many things. I tried moving the paper around so I could read the rest of the words, but it wouldn't budge. I pushed the paperweight with all my might, but I couldn't move it an inch. It must have been made of solid rock. I was still struggling with it when I heard Mr. and Mrs. Brisbane talking. Goodness, I thought they were asleep. I quickly dived off the desk, slid down the chair cover, which was like a bumpy slide. I landed on the seat, paused to catch my breath, and then continued to slide down the leg of the chair. Next, I scurried across the floor to the table. I was moving fast, but I skidded to a stop when I realized I had no idea how to get back up. I certainly couldn't slide up the table leg. Still, I'm a clever hamster, so stay calm, and I checked out the area. I breathed a sigh of relief when I discovered a big stack of magazines on the floor. I carefully climbed up them one by one. However, when I made the leap to the table, my back paws pushed the top magazine off, and the whole stack collapsed with a loud thump. I dashed in my cage, pulled the door closed behind me. A few seconds later, Mrs. Brisbane came shuffling out of the bedroom, wearing her robe and slippers. I'll check it out, Bert. I'll be right. I'm sure it's nothing. She turned the light and looked around the living room. Sorry to wake you, Humphrey, she said while I tried to look as innocent as possible. Then she saw the heap of magazines. Oh, that's what it was. She shook her head. I hope they didn't scare you. Just a little, I squeaked, even though I knew she couldn't understand. I'll straighten those up tomorrow, she said, turning off the light. As she was close to the bedroom door, I heard her tell Bart, You're going to have to build me a magazine rack. I'll be happy to, he replied, after the boat race. It was quiet for the rest of the night, but I didn't sleep a wink because of what I'd seen on Mrs. Brisbane's list, especially the mysterious secret G. The boat race at Potter's Pond, the maps, and the colorful treasures certainly sounded exciting. With a pirate captain coming along, it could be scary, even dangerous. Still, the more I thought about it, the more I knew that, scary or not, I did not want to miss the boat race for anything in the world. I slept in late on Sunday and woke revived and refreshed. The Brisbanes were in a happy mood, and so was I. After all, I was going on a treasure hunt soon. So I hoped. In the afternoon, Mr. Brisbane brought a model sailboat into the living room. It was a fine-looking craft with a crisp yellow sail and a bright red hull. I couldn't resist making my boat of my own, he told Mrs. Brisbane. It's great, but only a student can win the prize, she replied. I know, Bert said. He set the boat on the table and opened my cage door. Let's see what kind of a sailor Humphrey would make, he said. Mrs. Brisbane quickly stacked up the books around the edge of the table so I couldn't escape. I don't think he'll like it one bit, she said. I couldn't believe that my teacher, who is smart most of the time, could be so wrong. I'd make an incredible sailor. I just knew it. Mr. Brisbane gently set me in the boat. See, Humphrey? It's just your size. Yes, it was exactly my size. I felt as if I'd been born to sail in the boat. I stood at the bow, that's the front of the ship, and imagined myself setting sail for a far-off island in search of hidden treasure. Looks like he was born a sailor, Mr. Brisbane observed. Now there's a smart man. Don't be ridiculous, his wife said. I wouldn't let Humphrey get within a sight of water. What an unspeakable thing to say. Why? Mr. Brisbane asked. Why? I asked too. Because hamsters must never get wet, Mrs. Brisbane explained. They catch chills so easy and get sick or even die. Plus, water removes the good oils in a hamster's fur. You really should read up on hamsters the way I have, Bert. My heart sank to the bottom of my paws. This was worse news than anything Mrs. Wright ever said. Guess you're not going to Potter's Pond, my friend, Mr. Brisbane told me. I felt like I was spinning without a wheel. I felt sick with disappointment. I felt just about as bad as I did when Mrs. Mac left and broke my hamster heart. No way, Mrs. Brisbane agreed. Besides, the poor thing would be terrified. A lot she knew. She has no idea of the fur-raising adventures I'd had, and I'd hardly ever been terrified, except by the large, unfriendly animals like Miranda's dog, Clem. Mr. Brisbane put me back in my cage. Sorry, Humphrey, he said. You think you're sorry, I squeaked. I'm about the sorriest creature in the world. They laughed at my squeaking, which hurt my feelings, but I forgave them. They're only human, after all. Okay, chapter 7 was totally worth reading. Real quick. So, the next one will be chapter 8. See you then. Bye, guys.